Hey there, part 3 of this little series I'm doing on existentialism and viewpoints and unpopular opinions and opinions of ordinary and non-ordinary people. One of the inspirations for me was being online and looking up different viewpoints on things and experiences with different substances and how to use them, and just not finding any. So one thing I brought up before when I was talking about, or just had briefly mentioned, kratom and other substances, psychotropic things that make a noticeable change on our psychology and our chemistry, our chemical arrangement in our heads. The interesting thing with these substances, well, when you think about substances in general, hormones are basically drugs. And I use drugs as a word to describe basically the origin, like from a chemistry term. I guess substances would be a less stigmatized word for it. But anything that alters our consciousness or influences our consciousness, these are definitely hormones as well. And that's why I bring that up. Now, when it comes to using substances, a big part of it is your intentions going into it. So if you are, sorry, it's bumpy, I'm on the back roads, about to hit the smooth pavement though. So when it comes to substances, your intentions is pretty much everything. If you're just trying to get effed up and you're trying to escape, or which isn't all bad, I don't want to shame escapism. We all need a break from this crazy reality where we're all just been through a long line of ancestors who are gaslit through belief systems, mind control, etc. You fill in the blank. In a world with all that, it checks out that, we need a break. We all take vacations and stuff, but the main way that I use substances or implement them in my life is to shift my consciousness. So there is the ordinary consciousness. There's, I like to call it pure consciousness, and it's basically just default consciousness. It's what I would have from just trying to live a healthy lifestyle, exercising, eating right, not trying to have any external chemical disturbance or perturbation. And so that sorry, I'm distracted by a school bus here that's blocking the road. So we have a lot of different substances that go through us and influence us. Pure consciousness is what a lot of people are just totally content with, which is understandable, because if you have a good thing going and you feel great on a day-to-day basis, there's no reason to change that, disturb that, or alter that. I like to use substances to alter my consciousness in a way that is different from just the ordinary flow of things and I guess consensus consciousness, even though there are people who, without doing any drugs, have like supernatural experiences, out-of-body experiences, all this stuff. So different people have way different experiences, just on a base level. For me, I have a bit of a high constitution, and I run naturally bored. and daring things, and just, be a little crazy, just to feel a sense of excitement and stuff like that. So I was a pretty wild one growing up, but I also like the peace and calm and the space to think and try to figure out what's going on. What am I here for? What am I all about? And I'm getting text messages from my boss. So what I wanted to get at, here it is if you are just taking drugs, the drugs are going to use you if you don't have any kind of intention behind it. So you need to use the drugs. Like, a good example for this is if I'm trying to practice different licks on the guitar. That can get kind of boring when it's just all by itself, not in context of a song per se. But you can gloss it up and make it more juicy with an enhancer. And why wouldn't you add flavor? Like, it's trendy to be a little pious over, well, it's like, well, I don't need any enhancements, and it's like, well, that's good for you and that's your prerogative. But I actually do like enhancements when it comes to being in a 3D realm and being a physical body. You're missing out on a massive part of the human experience if you aren't into any kind of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? And there's lots of stigma and shame around it, but you don't have to be a psychopath to do any of that, and we know it. I'm kind of being dramatic here. It's like you don't have to. It's like we're free to try different forms of consciousness, and there shouldn't be a sanction. Like, consciousness should not be a sanctioned thing by the powers that be. We are sovereign, sentient beings, and as long as we aren't out there hurting others or limiting other people's I keep wanting to say autonomy because I've used that for a long time, but autonomy, yeah, it can be like your own thing, but it can also just be like Autobots or something. Like, it's just something on automatic, which, yeah, can also speak to that, but it also, I don't think, speaks to the full the wholeness of the essence of being a sovereign being, which means free will, making decisions, perceiving things, orienting oneself as they navigate through life. And words are also consciousness. It's like the needle and thread of consciousness. It's the long division. It's the slow way. If we had telepathy, we probably wouldn't speak into each other's heads because that would take just as long. Instead of, let me tell you what I mean, I could be, let me show you what I mean. And way less words. Like, no words required, really. Like, if you can see an image, the knowledge is all there. It's all evident. It's all before you. It's like, if someone hasn't tried a certain food or watched a certain movie, you'll be like, oh my god, you need to try this. Like, or it's like, we can't go another day without you watching this movie if you haven't seen Forrest Gump or whatever. I'm just throwing out things people say. And yeah, so you need to experience something to really have knowledge of it. And it is a ubiquitous thing that people are scared of what they don't know, myself included. I'm very skeptical. Whenever I take a substance I haven't taken before, I take a very tiny amount. See what that does, make sure I don't have any allergic reactions or anything, or if because you need to get just a small enough amount for your brain to learn how to navigate in that state. And if you're trying to do something like pull ideas back into space, and I'm going back to talking about wielding your consciousness as far as your intent when you go into an altered state. Like, what are you going in there for? Do you just want to be an observer? I mean, that's fine. On large doses of mushrooms, I will ask it questions. I'll tell it when it's being too much. I'll tell it when it can be a little more. And there is an intelligence there. It does, like, we can't explain what that is, but anyone that has been there on a large dose knows what I'm talking about. So if you go in with your intentions and say you want to bring back some idea, like you're trying to write a book and you're lost in thought, you can take it even deeper and use a substance. Now it's different with every substance, obviously, but let's just use cannabis. So it's a great one if you have writer's block, or if you take mushrooms. That will definitely break through your writer's block. Talk about a game changer. That is a game changer. But it takes a lot of courage to go to those places. It's not like the easy way, like just by eating some drug or something you can, get this automatic enhancement. No, you have to do the work. Like, while you're there, it's not necessarily easy. It's a space you're not, per se, used to unless you're, like, doing a substance all the time. So that's a big part of it, is how you learn to navigate through the influence of that substance and what you choose to do, what your intent is. All these things are substantial parts of all the aspects that to make up an altered state. And what you're doing there, it's the set and setting often. And yeah, it takes courage oftentimes to go to those places, like anything, because it's not necessarily comfortable. Got a little cabin light. It's not necessarily comfortable to be in those states, and it's not like you're just going to have an awesome trip every time, especially if you deal with mental health struggles like I do. And we all deal with different struggles in different ways, and we can use those things to our benefit because it perturbs our brain to find a path, but to find maybe another path. Maybe there's an easier way to get to something, like a state of mind, or like for me, I had a real stammering problem early on, and it really redirected that. And there's an easier path, like neural network, for my mind to have the words come through in a somewhat coherent and clear, cogent, like, smoothness, hopefully. Because it was really awkward when I'd stammer. It'd be like, I'd have all these thoughts, or it'd be kind of wrapped up and riddled with anxiety, and it would be at the doorway to where my mouth works, but it would be like, I would just freeze up, kind of. It would get jammed. But I found an easier way to do that. So I'm going to try to be better about giving examples for exactly what I'm talking about, because you can take these things so many different ways and easily take it the wrong way. So being specific and using my words to really describe what I'm trying to convey in an eloquent manner, I'm going to be elaborating on a lot of these things, and I'm kind of just touching little bits of the iceberg in different spots for basically what I've been thinking about and studying in a rather autodidactic kind of way. There's another auto word. I feel compelled to, like, say something about it and to talk to people and put it out there. Like, I don't want to be the LIKE and SUBS, you know what I'm saying, on YouTube. Like, no. Like, whatever happens with these videos happens with them. But I want to start a conversation about these things. I want who's ever listening, I want you guys to ask me challenging questions and anecdotal questions, and I love there isn't necessarily a right or wrong, because it depends on the person. It depends on the substance, the time, the set and setting, what you're going through at that time in life. There's so many factors that play in, and it's easy for us to come to conclusions way too soon on things and just be like, oh, well, this wasn't for me because, this one time didn't work out, or it was horrific, or like whatever it was. And so feel free to ask me questions. I love to pontificate. I love to speculate. I feel it is bad aesthetic to give away belief to anything unless it's something you've experienced, and you still have to be careful with beliefs, because just because you experience something a certain way doesn't mean that is the way it is. It could just be a one-time thing, or that was just the way you saw it, that was the point of view you saw it from. So all this said, I'm not trying to preach truth or whatever all that is. I just want to talk about what's going on. And these things are relevant in not just my everyday life, but everyone around me, whether they choose to think about it and talk about it or not. And I want to talk about it. I have an undying curiosity to the point of frustration with existential things and consensus consciousness and normalcy and conformist and reductionist things. People have just been pushing aside these questions, or it irritates them that it's even like that. And yeah, it should. There's nothing wrong with being irritated. Totally acceptable in this life, in this world. We are constantly being poked and prodded and probed, or whatever it is, and I'll get more into that with the archons and the archetypal mind that we share, that is their real estate. And it can be all really haunting and daunting and terrifying to people, but it's really not that bad. We, as sentient, autonomous beings, have the God-given right to be free and just think, and especially with the massive amount of naivety we have for just not knowing what we're doing here, we have our values, we have the things we value and what's important to us, and our morale, and the prowess and the things we've found to be useful, and how we've learned to be skillful with things. Yes, so these videos are going from a very general place, and they're going to get more and more specific as I go. I know it's a little long, because our attention spans are so short these days with just the crazy amount of shift that technology and everything has had on us in this industrial age that we live. It's a pretty wild time. I think we should be talking about everything. It's all on the table. There's nothing that should be taboo or too cringe to talk about. If it's cringe, we should probably be talking about it even more. And I've been cringe for too long. As far as eked out by things and embarrassed to say something or have my viewpoint. No, that's just, there's no reason to feel embarrassed or ashamed or any of that. I mean, unless you overtly did something effed up to then yeah, that's different. But our nature is a very curious thing, and desire, and why we do what we do, and why we feel what we feel, and why we do what we do in spite of what we feel. So yeah, I am bursting with questions and excitement to talk about things, and I'll try to keep it linear and have some kind of continuity with each of these videos, because as you can already tell, I can kind of be all over the place, kind of bring it back to this, bring it back to that. But I will let it be, and I'll catch you on the next one.